Look at that. Ain't it just gorgeous? I'm very proud of this one. Howdy, let's get into it. This cabinet is just that, a cabinet. Albeit a very shallow cabinet, but a cabinet nonetheless. A large walnut box with some fancy doors. This video is not about the whole dartboard cabinet build, but rather how I added some fancy detailed doors. And a little about how I made this mistake. Simply put, the router traveled on me a little, and I didn't notice the deviation from the path until it was too late. I tried to go back over it, but that just made it look worse. So, since this project affords me the use of a spare side, I flipped the door and tried again on the reverse side. Not much is required to get this pattern carved, just some scraps and patience. I created this simple jig from some scrap plywood. I nailed them together to tightly fit around the 3 of the 4 sides, then clamped that jig down to my small workbench with the edges slightly overhanging. Now I can just set the doors in the jig and clamp them down to the table. This gives me the outermost reference edge of the pattern. Yes, this is still recording. The accessories on the inside of the door would cover the mistake, mostly. I used a few different methods when achieving this look. However, the basics are the same. Follow the edge guide to the next edge guide. Since the pattern turns in some places where I'm working away from the reference, I need to know where the stops are. I didn't want to have to set up a group of stop blocks for each segment of the pattern. That would be 22 setups per door. So I pushed the router bit into the wood, creating a little mark on each end using the guides. Then connected those dots into lines that make the entire router path. This way, all I had to do was move my outermost references around the board and run against them from stop to stop. When I cut the next door, I just marked the stops and didn't bother with the full pattern. The first side of the door I cut, the one I showed at the beginning with the line that went off all wonky, I laid down blue painter's tape all over the edges and cut over the top of that, hoping that would help reduce tear out and keep my router from scuffing up the surface. This ended up being part of the problem and not really the solution. You see, the tape clumped up in little bits as it got cut and then got caught under the router and along the edges of the router base. This caused my router to lift and move in ways that I didn't want, and I deviated from the line. I could feel it sticking and pulling at times, but I would just stop, remove the tape clumps, and power on through this little inconvenience. It wasn't a problem until it was a problem, and then it was too late. Part of it was the tape bits, and part of it was my own complacency. We tend to feel like nothing can go wrong if we stick to the plan. Then something goes wrong because it wasn't part of the plan, or there was a lack of information or foresight or something. Sometimes stuff just happens and we can't do anything to predict or prevent it. There's a saying that goes around the maker community. It's not about how perfect you can get the final product. It's about how you handle the mistakes that you make along the way. I would agree. Most people with the right tools can create almost anything. But how do they work around or with the mistakes and accidents that happen along the way? That is true craftsmanship. This mistake was upsetting at first. After all, it was 2 full 3-foot by 1-foot panels. Having to glue up 2 more of the same panels would have cost me time and money, and this is walnut, which is not the cheapest, but not the most expensive of woods either. So I decided to try again on the other side. And if it didn't work, things would get drastic. Alright, back to the good side. First, I better move that other panel before it falls off the edge of the table. I had 2 sets of plywood strips as my spacers for the lines of the pattern. These just extended my fence in to the door for the parallel lines. One set was 1 inch thick and the other was 3 inches thick. The inch-thick spacers gave me the innermost line that runs the whole border, while the 3-inch spacers, in combination with the inch spacers, allowed me to create the intersecting details at the corners, that square pattern you see. It wasn't obvious to me at first, but this pattern contains one square that runs the whole perimeter of the door, that inner line there. This can be cut in one pass. It helps to have a vacuum ready and running so you can clear out all the dust and chips as you go. They can cake up and push the line, making it look a little caffeinated, and we don't want that. I originally wanted to create this pattern with alternating wood types. Walnut for the majority of the door, then maple or ash for the lines, and finally some cherry for the inner corner details. My prototyping didn't go so well. I needed precision I just could not get in my shop, and I can't trust end-grain to end-grain glue-ups. I'm working with job site tools, and they don't hold square all that well. It's not an excuse, just an acknowledgement of my shop and tool limitations at this time. Since I blew the last of my petty cash on that hot new Zelda game, I rethought my process and lowered my ambitions to align with my current tool setup. Once I can upgrade to a true cabinet saw, I'll revisit that original idea, maybe in a different project. For now, I'm going to stick with the more basic joinery my job site table saw can handle. So I cut a groove to receive the backer panel in the box before I glued it up. Then I cut a 1/8 inch panel to fit in that slot and painted it a matte black that'll accent really nice against the walnut. This color is called carbon if you really need to know. Then I slid that into the cabinet box and added the top to hold it all together. The top is held on only by 5 screws, no glue. This way the owner can remove the top and change out the backer panel as it gets worn down by errant darts. Behold, the 8th wonder of my shop, the backside of this cabinet. I gotta get my logo on there. Even without the finish, that walnut is beautiful. The doors are attached with a simple hinge I found at a orange home center near me. These are black to match that inside backer panel. There are 2 stops, one at the top and one at the bottom, to catch the doors. They are held in place with magnets on both the stops and the doors. There are dart holders at the bottom of each door to hold 6 darts each. You see, this covers up part of that mistake I made earlier. This really makes that walnut pop. For this, I just used some good old Minwax poly, 3 coats. Why overdo it? I am so happy with how this came out, and the client was ecstatic. As a matter of fact, he came over right away and picked it up. One last touch before we tie up this whole project, the scoreboard. The client supplied the scoreboard, which had a chalk holder at the bottom, but it's a whitewood. Let's make it carbon to match. There we go. I just taped it off and gave it a quick touch-up. It's the details that matter. So, until next time, go make some sawdust and make some mistakes. So, that dartboard cabinet video that we just watched, that's kind of the soft reset of my channel here. I plan to go back and remove all previous videos, excluding this one, as I go through and add new videos to my channel. The previous videos were light attempts at making content, and I feel like I've learned a lot, especially generating short form over in the Instagram and TikTok space, and working with other makers online. And I want to go in the same direction, but in a different way, if you will. Take a different approach to things. And this video was recorded probably about 6 months ago, and I didn't have that in mind. But I wanted to release it because I feel like there was a lot to gain off of it for not just myself, but an audience, a potential audience. There was a technique there that I had never done before that I came up with on the fly to create the look that I was going for. That I really wanted to share. I didn't record anything else from the project because I didn't consider recording anything else from the project. Recording the rest of the build may have made an entire video about that dartboard cabinet, a whole thing, but I did not. So I gave you what I had. Currently, I'm recording a kitchen island build that I did, and recording that with the forethought of making content off of that recording. Now, my video equipment isn't the greatest, but you can change that by supporting me. Maybe don't do it here. Wait, check out my next couple videos, see what you think, and if you like them, hang around. We'll do more. The reason that I am using this video content that I created for the dartboard cabinet is kind of has something to do with what the Swedish maker said when we had him on the podcast a few weeks back. This right here.
Yeah, I remember the first video. I had been preparing a bit to release a video, and then I was messing about with the editing, and then I just thought, screw it, I'm gonna learn along the way and just keep posting until I get good at it, which is what I've done, and you kind of grow into it, and you learn just I don't care what people think. It's just what I do. It's kind of a maturity thing, I think.
I found that to be quite inspiring. Just learn as you go. Figure it out along the way. It's an experience, and that is part of what you share. That's part of what the audience potentially enjoys. So, with that in mind, I will be learning as I go, and I hope you go with me. So, thank you. This has been the first of what I'll probably be many post-mortem videos. I plan to cap off each of my future videos with a short walk and talk, if you will, about the project and what I got coming down the line. So for instance, with this particular build, as I talked about in the video, I had a few mistakes that I managed to somewhat cover up. Probably could have done a better job covering them up, but I was kind of in a rush. And as far as what's coming up the line, like I said, I got a kitchen island that I'm building out, and I've been filming. I got a small project involving my headphones. That'll be interesting. And also this wall back here with all this equipment. I want to do something back there. And I have some thoughts, some ideas, but that one might be a little later down the line. So hang with me, and let's enjoy the journey together.